Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 9th episode of Latin Women in Action podcast. My name is Joselin. I'm a social work intern from York College, and here we have...
I'm Karla. I'm a CUNY student as well, Queens College Urban Studies major, and today we're going to be talking and discussing about domestic violence.
Yes. To begin our discussion, I'd like to define in short terms what is domestic violence, but I want you guys to know that this is just my perspective. This is not something like I went and actually did actual research on it, because I don't have like a lot of statistics, but this is something that is from personal observations that I've noticed in family.
Yeah.
So domestic violence is verbal, physical, mental actions or threats, or either coercive behavior that is reoccurrent in intimate relationships. In my family, this is something that when I grew up, I didn't see in my mom or my father, but this is something that I know my grandmother has gone through because she's a victim, and I have an aunt that's also a victim.
And you've heard stories from them.
Yeah. And I've also seen when, before my mom would work, she used to work in a belt factory, and I would stay with my grandmother and my grandfather. This is something that I've actually witnessed in, personal contact, being there in the situation. I remember my grandmother would have to clean, cook, and do every other chore in the household to please my grandfather.
And do you think those things might have led to
this is something
or what is your take? What do you think led to what occurred between them two?
This is something that I believe is a factor for women, not only Latin American women, that you can see in households where men are breadwinners and women are supposed to be at home raising their children, doing whatnot, doing chores, cleaning, etc. And this is not something we see in modern day.
Yeah,
because this is from my grandmother's perspective, which is decades ago.
Yeah, but even then it was much worse because there was really no further education for women that was available or attainable, or it was just this norm that women didn't go to college and just would let the husband
go
make
about
all
their
the money.
business. Yeah, that's very true.
So that could also be a factor into why women have always had this sort of role in the household to just be
from what I see in my family, it's most men, my uncles and stuff like that, from what they see from my grandfather, men are supposed to be the breadwinners. They're supposed to sustain women economically, and they're supposed to do as they say because he's the one that's sustaining them.
Yeah, but it's much more different in Latin communities where it becomes this sort of thing where it turns into a negative thing versus in our modern day. I feel like most husbands do go to work and stuff, but it's completely different than the Latin community. The Latin community, they tend to turn abusive due to that fact and begin to say certain things or do certain things because they're the ones making the money, and they feel this sort of entitled, because they're the ones making the money, and they do tend to throw it in the face of a woman. Versus I feel in American household it's the man is going to make the money, but it's not really known that they have the machismo and stuff that Latin.
Yes. This is toxic masculinity with men. And while I still may ask why in modern day is there statistics and stuff going on in the news, why is the world changing so much, but then there's issues with domestic violence, as you said, women are also working as well. Why should this be an issue? Exactly. This is a question I still ask myself.
But even then, women who go to work and make money and sustain themselves, sustain the family, they do still have to come home and clean, do the dishes, do the laundry, take care of the kids.
For example, my mom, even though we grew up, it's my brother and I that are siblings, mother and father, sorry. And then I have two other siblings that are only my father's. My mom after she terminated where she used to work in that belt factory, she made her own business at home. She became a babysitter, and while working, she would provide for my father, cook for him, clean, do laundry and stuff like that. Everything she could do while babysitting there with other children. But this is something that, even though she was earning money, and this was not long ago, this was something she still does, and she still does for my son. She babysits him while I work and I go to school, and she never thought to herself, "But I can't be submissive. I have to do something with my life. I still have a chance, and I still can stand up." If my father didn't like something that my mom did, he would make her do it all over again, no matter how many times she had to do it again. And as I said, this is not like my parents would not the type of parents that were always arguing with each other. Like if they had to like argue, they'd argue when we were asleep or somewhere else, so that we wouldn't observe any of that.
But you still heard, yeah.
Yeah. But this is not like an issue with domestic violence in general, because this is not something that reoccurred in my childhood.
But like you said, domestic violence, like you said, has different like levels, you could say, like the physical, and then there's also the emotional, verbal, like you mentioned, which is, this is what something would occur with your parents. It wasn't really anything physical, but they still had this verbal, her being submissive and him telling her what to do and whatnot, and
they had, yes, of course, that's very true that you're saying this, and this is not something I personally was not always there, because as I told you, they would always be excused from where they were arguing or doing anything like that. Was not for us to see, like my brother and I, and my other siblings. But from domestic violence, this is something that I thought personally my father would see in his grandfather, especially since he saw this in his childhood. I believed, okay, so he would grow up thinking this was okay, to something that would be okay to do. And this is something that my other uncles, I'm pretty sure that I have one uncle that would always fight with his wife, mm-hmm, and physically fighting him verbally, to the point where they're never getting, after the years, they just stop fighting and arguing. I don't know what would this stage be of domestic violence, because that would be physical and verbal and mental issues going on with the children as well, because the children, my other cousins, they're younger than me, they would see and observe. Unlike me, my parents would never do that in front of us, because that they knew that this would harm us mentally as we grew up, and this is something that should not be accepted by either men or women, because we should also know that men are also victims, not just women.
So Joselin, what would you say are some ways some things you've learned as a social work student to help or implement in scenarios like this, or like I would say like tactics that could help in the situations that are occurring within like a domestic violence situation?
I'd say that this is something that I wonder many women, like my mom, because my mom is still alive, she's not that old, many women like her we can also see where there's women, and I wonder how many women are still suffering from this and keep it all in, everything that's going on in their lives, every issue that happens in their intimate relationships, they just keep it all in and think it's gonna be over, and like not over, because they have the feelings, they know they've been hurt, but they accept it because they stay with the male partner.
But that's another topic to discuss, wouldn't you say? Like, do women leave eventually? Do they get tired of it and leave, or how do they better themselves? How do they try to get themselves out of these situationships? And if you don't mind me asking, like, you mentioned your parents, are they still together?
My parents are still together, and based off your question and other family members that I've had, like my grandmother is still with my grandfather even after those years. So I think it's very difficult for women to just go on and leave so forward, because this is something I personally believe that some women that think that they cannot be alone without a man, because the male partner is either sustaining them economically, or they just don't know how they can internally say to themselves, that they have to leave this man for their own good. They have to stop loving that person. But it's hard for some women, especially if they have so many years with their partner.
Yeah, I would see why it's hard for them to leave. Like you said, the husband is making the money, so then how can they support themselves? How can they support themselves emotional? How do you go about telling your family members, listen, I'm getting abused, and then for you to just keep waiting and waiting and waiting to see if you eventually leave that partner?
Yeah.
And like you said, most women stay at home and they have no source of income, and it's hard. It's how do you look for help, and how do you seek to better yourself?
Well, there are programs like Latin Women in Action that provides counseling centers for women who are enduring this situation. And this is a stepway for women to reach out to programs in such institutions like Latin Women in Action to approach and find better ways to either leave the situation they're in, or find better ways to sustain themselves, to be better for themselves,
or at least have someone to talk to. They can come and just
an arm to like provide counseling
unload
center.
their emotions and stuff. Because most Latin women specifically don't even have enough to go to a psychologist, to go and see someone to help them with their issues. So at least they have some sort of relief for their problems.
So this is the end of our podcast for today. Thank you everyone for watching.
We had a good convo.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. See you next time.
See you all next time.